Rayman has been on the portable scene for almost as long as he's existed in the world of video games. Premiering in 1995, it was just 5 years later in 2000 where he had his first portable adaptation, Rayman for the Game Boy Color. From here on out, every Rayman game had a mobile variant in one way or another. There are so many variants of mobile Rayman games that it can be a bit difficult to track them all down. Rayman's popular presence on the various handhelds would of course lead developers to attempt continuing this success into the next generation. The Nintendo DS was certainly less notable for the limbless wonder, seeing just 2 re-releases, before the virus known only as Rabbids negotiably killed off the Rayman series of games. The first Rabbids game on the DS, as well as on the Game Boy Advance, weren't that bad, following the same formula from the Rayman 4 Rabbids prototype. Apparently the first installment of Rayman Raving Rabbids also had a PSP adaptation which was cancelled. I can only wonder what that version of the game would have looked like. Unfortunately, it went downhill for Rayman after that. If only the Rabbids could have been killed off like in this early cover promo for the second Rabbids game, where a roadkill rabbit accurately portrays their contribution to Rayman's world. I can't be the only one who wishes they didn't remove that for retail. It's comically gruesome and it makes me giggle. Before the Nintendo DS, however, there was another platform for games that happened to have some Rayman games on it. No, not the N-Gage. No, not the... Actually, I'm not sure what that is. There we go, the Java-based Rayman games for mobile phones. The demographic for mobile phones was already established, and it certainly wouldn't be going anywhere in the foreseeable future. As such, there was little risk involved in making these quick little gimmies for some moderate profit. Publishers at Ubisoft were more well known for these mobile phone games, as they let a developer studio called Gameloft have pretty much full power when it came to the mobile phone's marketing and development of established Ubisoft franchises. That's a lot of trust, but one could expect that after learning that Gameloft, or rather Ludapocket at the time, had been created by Ubisoft's own co-founder, Michel Guillemot, in 1999. It wasn't just Gameloft responsible for the booming mobile phone gaming market. In fact, other companies had their own take on the formula, but Gameloft's success was of the most noteworthy accomplishments on the platform. These mobile phone games could be easily downloaded by texting a number or code you'd obtain by some means, likely from a promotional deal on the back of a video game's manual, which you had likely purchased of recent. The market price for these games at their time is hard to track down, but these titles generally range from $5 to $10. Seems a bit expensive for such cheaply made games, and you'd be right. Most, if not all, of these titles take less than an hour to complete to the 100th percentile. Gameloft was rather simple on the surface. Their marketing success, on the other hand, well, just take a glance at their sales figures. In 2006, Gameloft managed to rack up nearly $90 million in profit, and 99% of that was income from their mobile phone titles. But more closely related to this story, Gameloft's Rayman mobile games started in simpler times, almost as early as the company's own prime. In 2008, Rayman's last original Java-based entry had surfaced, being Rayman Raving Rabbids TV Party. For whatever reason, they entirely skipped Rayman Raving Rabbids 2, but I don't think there would be many complaining today, since past the first game, most appearances from these primal minions are in cheaply executed minigame compilations. Gameloft in later years ported popular Rayman games to trending platforms, like Rayman 2 for the iOS in 2010. Alas, from this point on, Rayman's unique and perhaps intriguing spin-offs had come to an end. With that conclusion, allow me to reintroduce the topic with Rayman for the Palm OS, created by Ludapocket, being Gameloft's earliest contribution to the Rayman series of games. As we mentioned earlier, Ludapocket was the precursor to Gameloft, established in France. With Rayman being a franchise originating from the French division of Ubisoft, produced by artistic talent Michel Ancel, you can make a couple guesses as to how Ludapocket got the rights to make this port. The game was essentially a remaking of the first Rayman game to the Palm OS, and respectively the Pocket PC as well. The port was created by Ludapocket's Oliver Huard at some point earlier than October of 2001, when what was left of Ludapocket was merged into the newly established Gameloft. While the port was made from the ground up, it was based off the earlier Game Boy Color port of Rayman from the previous year. It was also the most ambitious Gameloft Rayman game to ever come out on a portable. With improved graphics and shading, the result was more reminiscent of the original game's aesthetic with the enhanced capabilities of the Palm and Pocket PC. After the Palm OS, Rayman's Gameloft adventures continued into the mobile phone market via the Java 2 platform Micro Edition, otherwise known as J2ME. This set a staple for Gameloft's future endeavors with Rayman games. Rayman's first J2ME games were released in 2002, called Rayman Golf and Rayman Bowling. They were both in monochrome, with color variants arriving shortly after. Here comes good old Ray Boy bout to steal your girl, violently. Rayman Golf is, like all of Rayman's Java games, very simplistic in nature. You control a golf club, steering your ball towards the goal. Functionally, it works like most golf video games, having a power and precision meter to strategically mark on time for the best shot. The power meter slides upwards to about 50% slowly, then upon reaching the other 50%, speeding up greatly. It makes it very difficult to be precise, but there is some kind of trick to it since I managed to fall into the pattern. I wasn't sure what determined the speed of the precision meter, as it seemed to fluctuate at random speeds throughout the game. There are 18 holes to conquer, each well designed but somewhat repetitive. A couple maps felt very similar to each other. Alas, the game really lasts less than an hour from start to finish, so it's appropriate. You can of course repeat the game for higher scores, if that's your sort of thing. The art style is nice, relative to the original Rayman, and there are some fun sprites of Rayman upon getting stellar shots, as well as environmental slides for specific terrain landings. It's a fun little game that I have no reason not to recommend, but it isn't something I'd actively pursue had I not already been in the position to play it. Rayman Bowling is a chore. The moment you've landed your first shot, you've pretty much experienced the whole thing. After you land somewhere around like 20 shots, you'll have enough points to unlock the next level, where you do the same thing all over again with very minor variation. You'll come across new terrain that'll have something like a bridge, slippery slidey floor mats, and of course floor mouths. Why does Rayman look like he's about to drop the spiciest meatball of 2018? Basically, the rundown is this. Position Rayman, mark the direction, change the angle, select the speed. Yep, makes for more accurate shooting, but still isn't fun. I guess there could be people out there really into bowling who could find some enjoyment out of this, but even then I can't imagine it wouldn't end up monotonous over time. It's really just the same pins over and over. And there's 10 levels. 10 levels of this over and over with the bare minimum in variation. To think that a physical version of specifically this game exists on the N-Gage, can it possibly get more ridiculous than that? This paint looks like blood? Next game, Rayman 3, like its Game Boy Advance counterpart, is an enigma, bringing a crazy monster mix approach of both Rayman 2 and Rayman 3 for no discernible reason. This always confused me, it felt so unnecessary and wrong considering the tonal shift between the two. In the Game Boy Advance's case, you could wager it to be a prequel, but even then the hoodlums didn't exist yet, so it's a sequel? It sure doesn't feel like a sequel, but at least this one is somewhat relevant. In this Java release, there's no reason whatsoever to call itself Rayman 3. Sure, the black lums exist, on 2 of 9 levels. To consider that worthy of calling it Rayman 3, that's a big stretch. They serve exactly the same role as those puffs from Rayman 2. The only reason this has Rayman 3 slapped on is because it was more relevant at the time of release. This is not Rayman 3. Nevertheless, this is its Java release, and it is, well, short. Very short. Unlike the others, I was able to find the original price for the game. It sold for $5, and frankly, it's not worth it. It has bad physics, extremely minimized level design, and the final boss is a generic robo-pirate, something that you do indeed fight throughout the whole game, with no explanation whatsoever. And it all takes place within this window of gameplay. There's no exploration, no lums or cages, just this one robo-pirate. What kind of final boss is this? Oddly enough, this isn't the exact same Rayman 3 all mobile users played during its prime. There are 2 additional versions of this game preceding the most popular variant. While this version was released in 2004, 2 others exist, one from 2003 and one a bit earlier in 2004, which both utilized a different sprite sheet, having a much less appalling Rayman to look at. I know there were different phone models with different capabilities and screen resolutions, but usually these are designed for the worst device in mind across the board for compatibility. The only reason to upgrade the style would probably be for a better device if the game was successful enough and highly praised. This game lasts like 20 minutes. Why does this enhanced version exist? There's an unlockable bonus level, but it's no better or really different from any other level in the game. It's just another scrambled together level with the exact same assets and gimmicks. There's no reason to really go back to unlock this. That is, if you manage to skip the lums and cages, which are so easy to spot that I'd be surprised if you didn't collect them all. I'd say skip this one. There's nothing really worth salvaging here. Their next Rayman game was Rayman Raving Rabbids, released alongside the console game in 2006. The manual for the initial release, like many of these Ubisoft games, had an advert for the Gameloft mobile port on the back. Unlike the case with Rayman 3, this mobile port has no affiliation with the Game Boy Advance version. Whether loosely or not, it's entirely different, so I suppose I should commend that. It's too bad the game is practically broken in terms of its physics, and while I'd say it's original, it clearly isn't. Rayman the Hedgehog. What an original concept. Rolling around at the speed of how do 6 mash limbs roll. To be fair, it requires a pretty high IQ to understand the complexity of Rick and Morty. And this isn't really a bad game, it's just not really a good one either. It's not a minigame compilation like the main console release, and instead loosely follows the prototype. I say loosely because really the only thing that directly follows it is that you take down the Rabbids hand to hand. It has some short soundtrack introductions, which is something, at least compared to previous entries which were limited to basically just blips and bloops, though I think the hardware at the time is mostly to blame for that. There are a lot of gimmicks in this one, like this flower that blows you around in the pattern of a heart. There are also a number of times you'll use environmental platforming. In fact, this takes up most of the game. I enjoyed these mini-puzzles, though a few did fall flat. The backgrounds are alright. They look like painted canvases and serve their part. Some of them are actually beautiful, though it never really achieves anything outstanding, not that I think it ever intended to. The best thing going for this one is gameplay, because it actually works. There is fun to be had with this one, though it is consistently hampered by the physics. Rayman's speed is hard to understand and occasionally leads Rayman to a complete halt. My biggest complaint with the game is the 3 hit points. On its own that isn't so bad, but with the physics constantly throwing you into obstacles, it just isn't very fair. Even 5 I think would fit the job, but 3 is just too few for this game. There are 3 difficulties in this one, which is a step above Rayman 3's Java adaptation, though regardless of which you choose, it still won't be a cakewalk. Rayman Raving Rabbids for Java is alright. I wouldn't go out of my way to play it or avoid it, which seems to be a recurring theme here. Rayman Kart is to my knowledge the best Gameloft Java game out there. It is by no means perfect, but it was actually fairly entertaining. In addition, you could pick it up on a microSD card adapter by ping. The advertisements for it put some pretty high expectations towards it, making the bold claim of being the only mobile kart game as fun as on consoles. And while I will admit it is certainly impressive, and quite fun at that, I have no doubts that it is not the only mobile kart game as fun as on consoles. In fact, that statement alone is just laughable. Albeit, not a bad game, starting with Rayman and Glowbox, unlocking more as you go. It really doesn't take long to unlock them, though you could expect that from yet another less than 1 hour game. Unlockables are achieved by progression, though this game uses a ranking system. For each predetermined increment, you reach a new rank, unlocking more content. There are 8 decently sized maps with nice but relatively simple 3D accelerated graphics. Each map has 4 individual trials, with 3 different modes being campaign, arcade mode, and free play. Completing all of these would of course take more than an hour, just running through one of them took me about that long. At that point you've seen all the maps, but these extra modes have some variety to put a spin on things. There's a surprising amount of content here in contrast to the other Gameloft titles. While not on the league of a Game Boy Advance game, or really any full game, it's not too far off. Let's not keep dodging the obvious though. This is a blatant Mario Kart clone. You pick up items to use against the opponents and hope you'll be lucky enough to make first place. Unique to this game though are players' specific abilities. They're picked up the same way as any other power-up, having a chance of obtaining it through a mystery box on the track. These power-ups usually hold a larger impact and are relevant to the attributes of the characters' personalities. For example, Rayman turns into a giant fist that works identically to the bullet bill in Mario Kart. The Rabbid turns everyone else on the map into a slow Rabbid for a short period of time. What kind of strange power-up is that? Sure, slow them down, but temporarily turn them into Rabbids? What's the point? Anyways, then there's the Teensy, which can teleport directly into first place. This is the worst decision I've ever seen. You can literally activate this power-up at the end of the map and score first place, even if you're way off the mark. It's literally the equivalent of a cheat code. Who came up with this, and why was it ever considered acceptable in a racing game? There is no excuse for such an unfair game-breaking ability such as this. But all in all, not bad. If you have one of the devices that it can be played on, I'd say give it a shot. Oh, and by the way, I managed to find out that the N-Gage has a way to play J2ME jar files on it. So, let's get that out of here. Rayman Raving Rabbids TV Party. Wow! I wanna die! Released in 2008, this Rabbid adaptation is one of the worst things I've ever played. It's a minigame compilation, oh joy of joys. But worse than a minigame compilation is a minigame compilation that uses a total of just 1 button. Everything is based on timing. Oh gosh, is there anything nice I have to say about this game? I mean, the cut sequences before minigames are here, like in the console counterparts, but at least in those it kind of gives you a clue as to what you're doing. Here it just, I don't know what's going on. I kinda like the ghost rabbit that slams onto the ground. That was kind of fun. But oh my goodness, everything else just looks terrible. Why is Rayman even here? In terms of gameplay, usually the gimmick is that the rabbit will be moving one way and you'll press the number 5 to move them the other way. It doesn't even utilize the directional function that like every other J2ME game has. I mean, it is programmed, it works on the menu, but not here. 1 or 2 of these could be enjoyable, for 30 seconds, but then they just drag on, and that's not too dissimilar from the Nintendo DS version of the same game. They're just terrible. You'll use carrots to unlock more minigames and character skins, but don't do this. You're better than that. I don't even feel right calling this a game. It's just an abomination. Snake, Tetris, anything else on your phone would be better than this. And good lord, the music! If anyone was complaining about the lack of music in the other games, this will make you think twice. There are only a few tracks in the game. They're very short and they loop consistently. Oh, I knew going right into this just what it was going to be, and I was not okay with it. You can turn the music off, that's a plus. But why would you turn the music off if you're not gonna play the game anyway? Gotta put myself in a more positive tone here for the conclusion. Or should I? I don't know. Oh, what's this? Glowbox and the Happy Rainbow, rated M for mature. Yeah, that made me a little happier. What is this nonsense? Who came up with this combination? Is this real? Oh my goodness, it's real. Rayman 3 and Winnie the Pooh. Best crossover ever. Overall, while clearly a financial success, these Gameloft games were for the most part rather forgettable. While only a few of them are downright bad, most of them are simply mediocre. Back when they were first made available, they were a great time waster for those who'd always carry around their phones. The technical constraints of these devices was usually far beyond the capability of creating anything ambitious, so to expect something incredible was like looking for gold in a river. If you had a Game Boy Advance, the choice was obvious. But the truth is that not everyone had one of those, making these quick and easy ways to experience gaming on the go. That isn't to say most Java-based mobile games were underwhelming. There are a few diamonds in the rough. Doom 2 RPG is a bizarre yet highly praised J2ME game, and Ratchet & Clank going mobile is a great example of a 2D J2ME game. Spider-Man Toxic City was alright, and wouldn't you know, it was created by Gameloft. All that can be said at the end is that the J2ME games were a product of their time. Today, they are no match for Nintendo's handhelds. I mean, the Nintendo Switch is the thing now, for goodness sake. These games deserve a spot in gaming history all the same, and if anything, there's a lot to both learn and laugh from Gameloft's genius marketing efforts in the mid-2000s.